I want to talk about the Blackout experiments. This is based on the title of a movie. The premise of the movie is groups of kids are like, or groups of people rather, are contacting this certain site that basically gives them the thrill of their life. This is for thrill seekers. This is like a thrill seeker's thrill. So they're, submitting certain information about their thoughts, their fears, a little bit about their background, which basically gives the experimenters the perfect material to work with, because it's basically like a kidnapping of fear factor. These kids are given an address, and once they go to this address, the set address, they get snatched in and brought into whatever kinds of like mental abuses only, basically, because I don't recall anybody being hurt or harmed in terms of what these experiments entail. It was just to put a person through the ultimate shock in terms of just pure raw fear. Because these people were your typical thrill seekers. You would have a lot of people coming in from the golf background, etc. So I want to use that, and I want to flip it to this. That perhaps we are under some sort of a blackout experiment also. What if there are things that are in place that we have no knowledge of? And this would also be very true of our past in a very general manner of speaking. We weren't here in our past to invent the conditions that brought us here. Not on the 3D level. So we're already in the midst of an experiment, which we also call experience. We're in an experiment that we also call experience. We're in an experiment. What so blackout is referencing coversion, being covert, like black ops. It goes dark. It goes unseen, right? So the blackout experiment that we are experiencing can be whatever this construct is. With its rules, the flow of history, the timing of rulers, what styles come, all of this. But we're looking at it in what? In the black. What's there when you're looking at the pre-manifested form of things? All you're looking at from that vantage point is ideas and objectives. This is important because this will help you see into things like consumerism and understand how that really works, where anybody of any wage can easily be rich, no matter what your bills are, no matter what. It's just a strange level of self-control that actually does what is called compounding interest. You'll be saving in a different style. And we can probably get into that in some other video when we start talking about finances. But for now, with this blackout experiment, we're dealing with things in the black. So we're dealing with the very reasoning of things. Now we're starting with the idea. We're not talking about the house. We're talking about all the blueprints and what the house's purpose is for. You're looking at everything that's in front of you now with those kind of lenses. This puts you in the position from experiencer to experimenter. So now you're approaching life like what? Like a scientist. You're not holding grudges with whatever the results are. You're not so detached that you feel defeated in the process. No, you're just doing trial and error. You know that it's a mixture of this, a mixture of that. You're a chemist, an alchemist. So you're just mixing this chemical, that chemical. On a spiritual level, if we're to turn these things into like ideas, you would be mixing a little charisma with a little bit of book savviness, so that in the midst of your charm, you'll have the right kind of vocabulary to get you, to get certain groups of people on your side who may speak another vernacular. Some people call it code switching in the professional world, in the underworld professional world, I should say. Code switching. That goes back to the chameleon concept and more of the serpentine wisdom about how to camouflage. Paul says, to the barbarians, I'm like a barbarian. To the civilians, I'm like a civilian, so that I, for Christ, may win all. I can become like all. Magnanimity. The blackout experiments. This is all the results of what happens in the black. And when you're in the black, you don't owe nobody, right? It's the opposite of being in the red. You're not in the red, you're in the black. Because when you get into like the whole history of economics, no real civilian is in any real debt, no matter what it says on paper, versus what's been taken from you without you even knowing it. Forget about it. Everybody should be getting a stimulus for like 5 million just for being a human being in America if you was born and raised here. Because, and again, according to some things, enough things has happened on a very, very monetary basis, correlating across many different events where the average human being was disenfranchised. Otherwise, the balance of money, or we should say wealth, wouldn't be what it is, 2% versus 98. That would be equal. So this is all blackout talk. Here's what Jesus says when he's talking about like hell and all of that to the disciples or to the crowds, whoever he was teaching, whenever he got into that parable about kingdom comparisons. He said, on the outside, there is weeping and gnashing of teeth in outer darkness. We know what inner darkness is. We're talking about to go within. So you got to look at both meanings of darkness. It doesn't mean like being cast out into outer space where you feel a certain pain at that distance, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Of course, if you were flung into outer orbit or whatever the case, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth just from the pain of how cold it is. You know what I mean? How cold it is in the upper atmosphere, or how hot it is, whatever you face. You can't go there without a vehicle. Not talking on a 3D level, you can't. Your bodysuit will be destroyed. We're not built to, so it's not talking about that kind of blackout. So we're not talking about the physical cutting off of a light or a light switch or a lamp. We're talking about tackling things at the very genesis of the idea, at the very precursor, but on the outside of darkness. So if we're looking at inner vision versus outer vision, if you get caught up in what you see around you, because we're saying darkness, equating that with night. Night came first. It was night that saw the means to make light. So you're looking at darkness as a creative state, a place of a clean slate, not like a good or evil thing. On the outside of that, when you're looking into outer, you can get frustrated. You can be tempted to be jealous of somebody. Man, look how far they got in their craft versus where I am in mine. Look at their numbers versus my numbers. This, that. It'd be like a weeping and gnashing of teeth. The weeping is for the sadness. That represents the sadness. Feel grief that you're not at the top of the game. Grief that you're not where you want to be in your dream yet, in your vision or goal yet. You're not at that end result that you're looking for. You ain't there yet. So you got the weeping, the sadness of not having been there. And you may have wasted time and had to face some things where these probably have been delayed. So you got the sorrow. Then you got the gnashing of the teeth to represent the frustration of, sometimes we tend to kick ourselves a lot of times and continue to. It's just enough to point out the error in ourselves. We're not supposed to do the kicking ourselves while we down, just like we don't do it to other people. Don't be so hard on yourself, but at the same time, point out every mistake very gently, like a parent with their favorite child or whatever the case. This is how you navigate in this blackout experiment that we could call life. Because all it is an experiment dealing with the springing forth of an idea, whether that represents groups of people, nations, economics, spirituality. Things that are in the black tend to be just in the written down state when you go back to the times of paper, when people wrote it down or typed it up and printed it out. Most of that ink was black. And then you was writing with either black or blue ink most of the times. Right? And the pencil, the lead was also black. So black, the blackout is in the writing. Like when you hear things like it is written. So when you establish something, when you decide that something's done, when you say it, regardless of whether you believe it or not first, Right at that point, you in the black. You're no longer in the red. You did something about the red. You responded to the red. You responded to the root chakra. You responded to the base need to survive. You responded to that. Congratulations. Now you're now you're working in the black. Now you don't have that cosmic debt because you made an action. Or I should say, you don't have a metaphysical debt because you made an action. So you're tracking this in every stage of the way, but this is all in the black before it shows up in the light. You're handling things, you understand? So that's the blackout experiment in a sense. But what's so scary about it when you can correlate it with the movie is if you're not paying attention to these things, all of a sudden the era of your ways catches up to you like it does with all of us. Like if we ignore something and they have to hit us hard, that's like a black op mission. We probably either, ignored all the warnings, didn't see it coming, and bang, we get hit like out of nowhere. It just came out of thin air, out of blackness. It just came out of nothingness. Keeping a track of our life in the black state will help us to eliminate those things at best. So again, this is Super T Sigma with Sigma Program, and I thank you for your time and attention. Over here, reaching is teaching. Continue to vibrate high, people. Peace.